Alright, welcome back, folks. This will be, I guess we call it part two of, I'm going to fix my camera a little bit. I got it messed up. So anyway. Alright. So, I'm running out of memory, I guess, or something. I don't know what it was telling me it was going to shut down. Battery was good. So anyway, part two. So I went over, just give you a little tour of the shop in part one there. Just some muzzleloader stuff. Went through my shop. Talked about breech plugs, blackhorn, my cleaning process, for the bore, sizing bullets, trying to shoot for 20 pounds, loading pressure when you're loading bullet to bore. You got to have an adjustable sizing die, which is imperative. Different bullet types. You got to be soft copper lead core bullet to shoot these, especially blackhorn. That's really what I'm focused on most of this. The wads, the importance of using a wad, in my opinion. Breech plug design, and I know there was some posts the other day on Modern Muzzleloader. There's conversation about what they call poof shots or dud shots or whatever, where the bullet just barely goes out of the barrel. And blackhorn got a bad rap for that when it first came out, hard to ignite. I think that's just a complete farce. It was just a hype. It was a conversation that didn't exist, in my opinion. With proper CVA, some of the breech plugs didn't work, and they came out of the blackhorn breech plug. Pretty well fixed CVA. In my opinion, blackhorn, it's got to have a sealed ignition, first of all. You're not going to fire it off with something with a percussion cap or that, and the guns are not designed for it. But that being said, it's got to be a sealed ignition, and breech plug design is imperative of that. I believe all the plugs that I utilize in my custom builds or put in the nights, what I offer for the Omegas, will allow you to fire a much looser bullet. And I feel like I proved that. Last year I shot in the Nationals with a gun called Woody, which is on the bench here in a different stock for the moment, but was shooting a 425 grain lead bullet, pure lead bullet, with a chase patch that you could literally load with one finger. Had a wool wad under it, which is not giving you a huge amount of sealing characteristics, and shooting blackhorn powder in a large rifle primer ignition, which is not smoking hot like a 209, but it went off every time. So most of it is breech plug design. You can't have a bullet falling down the bore. There's a difference. The quick difference is black powder, power decks, a lot of those are explosives. They're sold as explosives. Smokeless powder or blackhorn is a propellant. So any propellant needs a certain amount of pressure to be created upon ignition. So it needs heat, pressure, and you get a very efficient ignition. Whereas you can throw a spark in black powder with no bullet in it, and it's going to go off. It'll blow the powder out the barrel. So, I think that all come down to breech plug. That's just my opinion. It all come down to breech plug. Now, is there times guys have keyholing and shoot bullets to the target sideways? I've done that. Usually it's a bullet that's not designed to shoot bullet to bore unless you're shooting huge pressures behind it or a lot of wad or something. But a copper bullet, solid copper for instance, very hard to shoot bullet to bore, smooth form sizing. Now if you get into full forming where you're actually engraving the bullet to match the rifling with a die, then yeah, you can make that work because you're sealing it up. But my opinion, there's bullets made for what we're doing, bullet to bore, and that's what I utilize to shoot the most accurate for what I'm trying to do. Or if you're using a paper patch lead, you want it to be able to bump into the rifling. Same with grease groove and all those. So the biggest part of this segment that I'm going to do is going to be discussing pretty much blackhorn powder, and the conversation comes down to velocities. So you're using a chronograph or a lab radar or magneto speed or something, and trying to find an accuracy node with blackhorn. I can tell you that the guy that helped me in the shop last summer, I don't know how many hundreds of shots we shot with a lab radar, great equipment, good rifle, and I came to the personal conclusion that that's really, really difficult with Blackhorn. And so I'll just say this, I've shot something like 11 different rifles in competitive matches with Blackhorn powder, and every single one of them I have simply loaded the max charge of 84 grains by weight or 120 by volume. Now that's a huge topic right there when I say that. I'm gonna pull out some data that this came from last summer, and I'm gonna read through stuff and you take from it what you want. So last summer, shooting a 275B from Parker, which is one of the easiest bullets on the planet to get the bump and shoot accurately and seal up and do that with a veggie wad. Everything was consistent. Gun was being cleaned between every shot, using very good form on the bench, good recoil management, and we did some velocity checking of, actually we turned out with 3 different lots of Blackhorn powder, and that's a huge discussion that comes up all the time, lots of powder. So let me give you a little backdrop. First 2 or 3 years of Blackhorn shooting I did in competitive or hunting or whatever, I did everything by weight, and I'm going to blow some people's bubble when I tell you what I end up with. But anyway, let's just move through it. So on this chart, we done some velocity checking, and started out, these was all done with 10 shots, and so started out with lot 30, and we shot 10 shots of lot 30, and basically we recorded the highest velocity and the lowest velocity out of those 10 shots with lot 30 of Blackhorn, done by volume, 120 grains by volume. And the velocity spread was 61 feet per second. Now this is a fine rifle with great ignition. Average being 2,250 feet per second. Doing lot 30 by weight, 10 shots, the velocity spread was 30 feet per second by weight. Lot 31, doing by volume, was 19 feet per second, and by weight was 13 feet per second. Lot 32, 22 feet per second versus 6 by weight on lot 32. Now, the difference on lot 30 from volume to weight was 66 feet per second. And on lot 31, volume to weight was 11 feet per second difference. And lot 32 was 76 between volume and weight. So that's a lot of data that gets confusing as could be. Now, if you're going to shoot different lots of powder, then there's another way of looking at it. Yeah, on this, it come out, the average, the velocity spreads was wider going by volume. And this is done by a powder drop to drop 120 grains. And then weighing 84. The velocity spreads was tighter doing weight than it was by going by volume. Now, if you was to look at this on a different way, and you say I've got 30, and the next 6 months from now I'll be shooting 31, and then I'll be shooting 32, and I'm going to be shooting different lots of powder over the next few years, and you get your gun dialed in. The interesting thing about that is the average velocity going by volume had a separation of 22 feet per second average over 3 lots of powder. If you did that by weight, the difference was, I didn't do the math ahead of time, 156 feet per second by average over doing it by weight over 3 lots of powder. So if you don't buy a 5-pound can and use that for the rest of your life and you die your rifle in, then volume is by far the best way to do it. Now the velocity, the ES's is wider, yes, but on terms of consistent average velocities, you're going to get it closer by volume. So that being said, in comparison, if you dumped lot 30 and 31 and 32 and you did it by volume, 120 grains by volume of lot 30 is 89 grains by weight. And these is all done 10 charges at a time. Lot 31 dumped at 120 by volume is 84.3 by weight. Lot 32, 120 by volume, is 83.3 by weight. So now the big problem comes into is they all dump by volume, but they come out with a totally different weight. So if you're weighing 84 grain charges of lot 30, you're going to end up with like 105 grains by volume. If you do 31, you're going to end up right at 120 because 31 was very consistent weight to volume. And then on lot 32, if you weighed 84, you're going to end up with like 125, 128 grains by volume. I know that's just numbers, it gets confusing. All that being said, so recently I just got my next 5-pound can of lot 35. And lot 35 done by 120 by volume is the worst I've seen yet. It comes out to 90 grains by weight. It's actually 90.7 average of doing 120 by volume. But one thing I can assure you that I could take my gun, and I did it last year in Woody. I shot some 31, I shot some lot 32, and I shot some lot 30 on different consecutive days, and I done every one of them by volume, and the gun shot very consistent, the same drops, basically the same velocity. So if you want to stay in the same velocity window, now the ESs may be a little wider, yes, but you can stay in that velocity window by doing it by volume. If I was to weigh out 84 grains by weight and use these 4 different lots of powder, it's going to be an absolute train wreck. I'm going to be all over the place with velocities. I'm going to have probably between those 4 lots of powder, I could have as much as 200 feet per second velocity change. Blackhorn will tell you to absolutely do it by volume. I've argued for 4 years consecutively that was absolutely crazy. But I will tell you, as far as I go, and me and my shop, and for the stuff I'm going to shoot competitively, and most of the guys that I'm helping, we've came to terms that I've got my RCBS powder drop that it dumps 120 grains by volume every time. And that's what I'm going to shoot every charge. Last year I loaded 400 charges to go to Friendship, and every one of them was done by 120 grains by volume. And I believe for the week I shot as good as I've shot in my life. So I know that busts the bubble. If a guy shoots a little bit and you, let's say you bought a 5-pound can of lot 35 and it'll last you for the next 20 years, and you got your gun dialed in and you're doing it by weight, I'm going to give you 100% thumbs up. That's going to work all day long, over and over and over, because you developed a load for that lot and you found out what shot the best. But when I'm planning on doing this for a long time, and going to have to buy more powder and more powder and more powder, and helping different people do something consistent. So the problem is, I get a guy, I build him a gun, we get it dialed in, it's shooting great with lot 30, and 2 years later he hits 35, he calls me, this thing's shooting all over the place, and the drops are all wrong, and I got a CDS dial for my scope and it's not working. And it comes down to, well, if you would have set it up and found a load by volume, I think you're going to find overall the long haul, my opinion, by volume is the way to go. So I'm going to show you now a little something. A lot of this is just over the years stuff that I've acquired. These targets have been seen before, but what this is a Remington 700 ml custom that I built. 45 barrels, shooting 84 grains, weighed powder. That was lot 30. and shooting a 275B, which was easy to bump. This was a comparison for the 700 ml LRMP, which is large rifle primer ignition, and a Federal 209A. The interesting thing is that with the large rifle primer, everything being the same, every shot procedure being the same, with a large rifle primer, this gun averaged 2,184 feet per second. Had a low velocity of 2165 and 2194 as a high. The ES was 29, or the velocity spread from high to low was 29 feet per second. That's 10 shots, and that's 10 shots at 100 yards. I'll take that all day long to kill deer. Now, shooting a Federal 209 ignition, we actually jumped up 9 feet per second. The interesting thing is that the velocity spread from high to low went to 17. That's a really, I'm going to tell you, for a Blackhorn over the long haul over 10 shots, 17 is a good number. If I could get that, I'd be happy all the time. And it shot really well. That's 10 shots. I mean, it didn't leave nothing but just cleaned a big hole at 100 yards. And 10 shot groups, I don't care who's doing it. It's hard to keep them all in the same game. But that's a comparison. That's a large rifle primer 209. But Blackhorn, the spreads, just shows the spreads. It can be as much as 29 and 17 over 20 shots. So I guess you could do the average and bump that out, probably something like 25 or something for a 20 shot average for ES. That'll shoot. Now everybody stresses out over the velocities. Yeah, if we're building a center fire rifle shooting smokeless powder and you're wanting to shoot little bitty itty bitty groups, yeah, ES is a huge deal. We're talking about Blackhorn powder. If you compared it to 777 Powered X, I got a feeling it's going to be in the same game. I don't know, because I haven't messed with that stuff hardly at all. But I'm going to give you some little bit of data that I think is interesting. So this is exactly my drop chart for my 45 cal rifle that I shoot at Friendship a lot. I shoot the same bullet at 50 yards, 500 yards. I've just come to, I like it. It's got a lot of recoil, but I like it. It's accurate. It eats wind. It's just a consistent shooter for me. I shoot the Arrowhead 325 grain XLD bullet. Every shot I take is shot with 120 grains by volume. I don't care what lot of powder it is. It's going to be 120 by volume. I don't mix lots, but it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be 120 by volume. I don't care what it weighs. And I'm going to do it with my drop thing consistent, do the same thing. But interesting fact. Let's say we got this arrow my dad has put in here, and I'm shooting 500 yard target. And I'm going to use the velocity spread that is pretty much the average. I'm going to use that the high to low velocity spread is going to be 30 feet per second. From shot to shot on a lab radar, I'm staying pretty consistent around 30 feet per second velocity spread. And let's say my average of this 30, the middle number, is 2,190 feet per second. So I made a chart at 2,175, 2,190, and 2,205. So we're covering a 30 feet per second velocity spread. 100 yards, you're never going to know it. 200 yards, basically indiscriminate. Let's talk about 500 yards. So if my velocity drops to 2175, which will be my lowest out of my average, and I'm shooting 500 yards, the bullet is going to drop 102.5 inches, which is 19.6 minutes and 33 inches of wind. So 102 inch drop, 33 inches of wind, 19.6 minutes. And the wind is going to drift at a 10 mile an hour value, 33.7 inches. So let's jump all the way to the highest. We just jumped 30 feet per second. And my dope would be at the lowest velocity. I ain't got that right. Let me pull it out. My lowest velocity, you probably can't see that. But anyway, I'll talk to you. The lowest velocity I'm going to shoot at 2175 feet per second, 19.6 minutes of dope's what I need, or 102.5 inches of drop. At the highest, 30 feet per second faster, my drop is 99.4 and takes me 19 minutes. So if you do the math at 1.046 for a minute, and we got 0.6 MOA times 0.6 MOA, comes to 0.627 MOA times 5 for 500 yards. 3.138 inches is the difference of point of impact of that bullet. At 30 feet per second difference, it's going to change it by 3 inches. Now, let's say the gun is 1 minute of gun accuracy. It'll shoot a minute of angle group at 500 yards. So you're going to add in your discrepancy for velocities up and down. So you could potentially, the gun could shoot 8.1 inch group if you do your part at 500 yards. With Blackhorn shooting that, I'd take an 8 inch group. My goal is, though, I've got half minute angle guns. So if you take a half minute of angle gun, it's shooting a 2.5 inch group at 500. You stack on the 3.138 for the velocity variation, and now you've got a 5.6 inch group at 500 yards. I've got wind road on here. So you gotta be really on your game to shoot 500 yards and hold under a minute of angle with Blackhorn powder shooting a velocity at basically 2,200 feet per second at the muzzle. It's down to 1,370 feet per second at impact at 500 yards. My point being is, yeah, if you had no ES, you take a 3 minute air out, or a 3 inch point of impact air out at 500 yards. We're dealing with Blackhorn powder. My personal opinion, I don't think we can do that. Now, in comparison, talking about that, if I could shrink those in at an angle and I could do the optimum barrel timing and find the node and go through all that, I can tell you that last summer my guy in the shop and me spent hours and hours, days, I guess, several evenings, and we shot like 84, 83 and a half, 83 grains, 82 and a half, 81. We shot like every half grain increment and tried to find velocities. And I can tell you, one night we go out and do it, and we settled in like it was 82.8, and I'm telling you, the thing was flat. Like over 2 or 3 powder charges, we had like an ES of 5, and we thought we had it. We had found it for that gun. This thing is money. Went out the very next night, and it completely dumpstered that whole ideal. It didn't shoot consistent. We didn't find the velocity flat there at all. So what I'm talking about is, when you got a good piece of equipment like a lab radar, what you do is you find out what your max charge is, and that's saying Blackhorn, it's going to be 84 grains, and we load in half grain increments down, say 10 charges. We'll shoot the gun 2 or 3 times, get it dialed in, get everything up and running, the barrel's warm, and we'll shoot those charge weights of 84, 83 and a half, go down, or you can start at the bottom and come up, it don't matter, and you track those velocities. And what you're looking for is, in a Satterley, what they call a Satterley test, when you shoot those 10 shots of different powder charges, you're looking for the velocities to climb, bump around, and all at once you'll see 2 or 3 charges that literally almost shoot the same velocity, and then it'll bump around again, and you'll find another node there. And if we start at 84, we come down, we may find a node at 82 and a half, and you keep going down, you may find a node at, I don't know, 78, let's just say. Well, that's awesome, and I want to prove that to be work, and I'm still working at that. But we've done Blackhorn several times that way with a particular gun, and we may do it next week, and it'll put a flat at a totally different charge. And I don't have an answer for that, other than Blackhorn powder is weird, but it makes good velocity, and it's accurate, and it's easy to clean. So I'm going to stay with it. It shoots good groups. It's not unheard of for it to take the guns, and we're shooting sub-minute of angle at 500. So the guns are actually shooting well under half minute if you take the gun itself, and then you add in the velocity variations at long range, and it starts adding up. So I'm going to jump ship a little bit from Blackhorn, but I want to show you a comparison. And this was just done. There was two witnesses, actually three guys. There was guys shooting. I was doing the loading and writing down the data, and there was two other guys witnessed this actually Saturday right here on our property. And that was done with that little camo mountain rifle I showed you earlier. It's a smokeless gun. But I'm going to show you for comparison. This is a custom gun. It's made for smokeless gunpowder. I know some of you can care less about smokeless. Some of you think it's cool. But the cool thing is you can do it as a rifle. And smokeless guns will repeat this and do it all day long. I guarantee it. It'll do it over and over and over. But this here load is a pet load everybody's using. H4198, 60 grains of powder. Arrowhead 275 XLD with a veggie wad under it. And a little 26-inch 45 cal custom Omega. The max charge weight we're going to stick in that gun is 60 grains. So we did it in 3/10 increments. My shop guy here, Aaron, loaded up 59.7, 59.4, 59.1, 58, so on and so forth. We dropped the charge 3/10, all by weight. We shot, I think, 3 shots at like 58.5, which is the middle charge, just to get the gun dialed in, get the barrel fouled. After shot 3, we started doing this Saturday rundown, this test. I should have charted it so you can see it. But I'm going to hit it off real quick here. The lowest charge we had shot at, so 25.14. The next charge jumped up 9 feet per second. The next 3/10 went up 20. The next 3/10 actually dropped 13 feet per second. The next 3/10 up jumped 26. And then at 58.5, 58.8, 59.1, over 3 consecutive shots, it shot 25.69, 25.67, and 25.67. That's a velocity spread of 2 feet per second over 6/10 of powdered change. 3 charges. It flattened right out. And what's really cool, at 59.1, shot 25.67, at 59.4, went to 25.89. It jumped 22 feet per second the very next 3/10. And the next 3/10, it actually dropped 18. And the next 3/10, it jumped 16. So it's just up and down, 15, 16, 20 feet per second. But neat part, 3 charges in a row shot within 2 feet per second. And we backed that up is that you could take that. So we settled in at 58.8. It's the center of those 3. The temperature was about 50 degrees. And I was sure that gun will shoot ESs of probably, it'll be in the single digits all day long. You know what I mean, in a particular atmosphere. Now if you have a big temperature swing, it's going to change some. But that's what a Saturday test is, what you're looking for. And you want to try to find that velocity flat. Show you another one just exactly the same. This is actually Woody when it was set up. You've seen Woody. This is the break. That's just crazy. You can see the size of my hand. That's a real gun. It's big. When Woody's set up, right now it's set up to shoot paper patch and black powder. But when it's set up to shoot smokeless and shoot, the powder is 78-28 super shortcut. And my pet load I ended up with was 125.3 grains. It shot an average of 32.26, and the ES was in single digits. We done the Saturday test on that rig, and this is where we started. So we knew, fellow Nick Parcher helped me out. Well, I finally knew that 127.5 was my max charge. So we went down half grain on that because it's a big charge. We went down half grain increments down to 123. We shot some fouling charges up here. First 2 cold clean bore. Second one just get the barrel fouled. I actually shot 5 charges of 125.3. That was just an accident. That was just a center charge. And over those 3 shots, the velocity spread was a total of 5 from the slowest to the fastest. So we started out doing our chart, 123.5, 31.68. So it jumped 28 feet per second and a half a grain. The next half a grain, the velocity went down by 10. And then 125, it shot 32.20. 125.5, it shot 32.25. It only went up 5. The very next charge, a half grain up, the charge jumped 56 feet per second. And then what's weird, the next half grain up, it went down. And then the next half grain up, it went down again. So it's all over the map, but right here in the middle at 125 and 125 and 125.5, it only moved 5. It was virtually flat. So we picked 123.5, and I can tell you, after that gun, it shoots, and it shoots crazy accurate. So I'm going to add to that twist. What is really, really cool, you find these baseline numbers, and then we're going to go out and we're going to shoot 5 shots and at 100 yards. And what we're looking for is a 100-yard velocity over here. And lab radar will give you that 100-yard velocity. Once I get that velocity, and I've got I know the bullet weight, I know the starting velocity, I know the velocity at 100 yards, I simply play with the BC of that bullet until I match what the bullet is doing at 100 yards. Once I get that, you can plug that into a good ballistic calculator and applied ballistics. I use the JBM. I've used all kinds of ones. If you put in the good data, the weather data, you can actually have done it several times. We've basically just shot a few shots 100 yards, got the muzzle velocity, got 100-yard velocity, figured the BC of the bullet. You could order a CDS dial and plug in the proper elevation. You can order a CDS dial from Leopold, and that thing, you can dope it 300, 400, 500 yards, it's going to hit where you aim. And I'll tell you, so this was Woody. The data we acquired, 125.3 we picked. We had the 100-yard velocity, plugged into BC, printed out a drop chart. This is fact all day long. This is a 100-yard group. There's the tip of my finger. That's been blowed up picture-wise. Twisted in the dope for 300 yards, aiming at the bullseye, and that's 3 shots at 300 yards. And this is the first time the gun was ever shot at 500 yards, ever. And I doped for 6.5 minutes up, and I put a half minute left in it for spin drift, just as a guess, to throw something in there because there was no wind. And this is the very first 3 shots ever out of Woody. 325 Aeromax, 3,260 feet per second is what we was getting on that day with lab radar. 1.360 center to center. That's 2.272 MOA, and there's the actual target at 500 yards, 3 shots with Woody. And that was done with, you know, a lab radar doing velocities. So, wanted to share that. I'm still actively trying to figure out, can you shoot blackhorn powder and get low ESs? I'm going to be honest, I've shot a lot of blackhorn lows. I'm not being able to get it. I don't care if I did it by volume or weight, what I did, up and down. One day it's phenomenal. Early in the morning it may be great. The afternoon it changes. There's just variables to it. But when you're talking about most blackhorn guns, 500 yards, 600 yards is way out there. And you're talking velocity spreads of 30 feet per second. It still shoots a very small group. Now, I'd love to get it into singles. Somebody tell me when they figure out how they can do it consistently. Now, they're going to tell me one day they did it, and yeah, I've done that too. And tomorrow I could do it again, and I have a feeling it's not going to prove itself. So, you know, a guy can beat himself to death with some of this. As I said earlier, I think it's 11 different rifles I've shot in competitively, and have finished very well in those matches mostly every time. Not saying I won them, but I shot very competitively most of the time, and I've done nothing but shoot 120 grains by volume. Early on I was doing 84 grains by weight, And every time I had a lot of powder change, I had to completely redo my dope charts and refigure everything for my drops. When I switched to volume, I'm shooting a very consistent average velocity, and consistency is the name of the game. And like I say, so hopefully that helps someone. Feel free, if you got questions, email me. Again, like I said earlier, it's fisk1967@gmail.com. I'm going to jump off here. I've stretched on, looks like 30 some minutes, and probably smashed a whole lot of data in that. But hopefully that helps somebody and maybe changes some minds, or maybe look at something a little bit differently. But just enjoy it. Get your loading process consistent, where you're getting good consistent ignition, and you got a good load worked up. So just settle in. I tell guys this: I'm going to do this with every one of mine. I'm going to dump my powder at 120 grains by volume with what I'm shooting on blackhorn powder, and then I'm going to play with maybe a different veggie wad or a wool wad, and I'm going to play with bullet fit. And obviously the basics is you got to have the right twist gun for the right bullets you're shooting. You got to be able to stabilize it and all that. So that's basics 101. You got to have the right ammo or the right bullet for the right gun. But once you've got that, the rest of it is just bullet to bore stuff, is playing with bullet fit. And some guys got them where they fit so tight that they blow their blood vessels out of their forehead to load them. I've seen guys literally push them down with 2 fingers. And I'm of the opinion that 20-pound loading pressure, the less I have to push on the bullet and disrupt it, I feel like I'm doing a whole lot better. So I'm going to get off here. Hopefully follow up. I didn't ramble on and throw a bunch of goofy stuff out there, but hopefully it was informative. And God bless you. Everybody be safe. Stay close to home. Take care, and be safe with this mess we got going on. And hopefully we'll see everybody on the other side of this, and we look back on it as just a bad day. So God bless you. Keep Jesus close to you, and we thank you, and you have a good evening. Bye.